The Battle of Istvaan III marks the official outbreak of the Horus heresy, a moment when traitors shed their camouflage for the first time, drawing blades against their own brothers. On this world, a handful of valiant warriors stood against an enemy far outnumbering them. It was an ode to sacrifice and glory, a clash between loyalty and betrayal. Today we delve deep into this rebellious opening battle, uncovering the chaos that unfolded on Istvaan III. The prelude, Istvaan's place in the Great Crusade. The Istvaan system lies in the Ultima Segmentum, far from Terra, a frontier world reclaimed during the Great Crusade by the Space Marines of the X-9's Legion, the Raven Guard, though their role here would later fade into the shadows of treachery. After its conquest, Expeditionary Fleet personnel established an imperial government on Istvaan III, initiating planetary reconstruction. For years, it remained a quiet outpost, until a frantic report reached Terra. The planetary governor, once loyal to the Emperor, had betrayed his oaths. Like Tambor, the traitor of Davin, he had fallen prey to the planet's primitive, heretical cults, rallying a militia to revolt against the Imperium. Terra's response was swift. War Master Horus Lupercal, leader of the Imperium's military might, was ordered to suppress the uprising. In the 5th year of the 31st millennium, Horus gathered 4 legions under his command, the Sons of Horus, his own legion, once the Lunar Wolves, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Emperor's children, and set course for Istvaan III. What no one knew, however, was that the great Horus had already been corrupted by the Chaos Gods. The primarchs of these 3 other legions, Angron of the World Eaters, Mortarion of the Death Guard, and Fulgrim of the Emperor's children, had also pledged their loyalty to the War Master's rebellion. To seal their secrecy, chaos stirred a warp storm, cutting Istvaan III off from Terra and disrupting long-range travel. Horus's true goal was not to crush a petty revolt, but to purge all loyalists from his ranks, eliminating any unstable elements before his grand betrayal of the Emperor. The warrior lodges, chaos's infiltration tool within the traitor legions, an insidious culture had taken root. The warrior lodges, originated by Lorgar Aurelian, Primarch of the Word-Bearers, the first legion to fall to chaos, these small brotherhoods were framed as a way to transcend rank and duty. Space Marines would gather in groups of 3 to 5, sharing stories of battle, training together, and forging deeper bonds to boost battlefield efficiency. But the lodges were a Trojan horse for chaos. Trust ran deep among lodge brothers. They spoke freely, unguarded by the formality of military hierarchy. If one member had been swayed by chaos, whispered to by demons, or seduced by promises of power, they could infect others with heresy under the guise of brotherly counsel. The corruption spread like a virus. First, quiet complaints about the Emperor abandoning the Great Crusade to sit on the Golden Throne, then disdain for the Terra Council and contempt for mortal humans. Finally, when Horus declared his crusade for a brighter future for Astartes and humanity alike, the lodges erupted in fervor. Brothers incited one another, twisting their loyalty into fanaticism for the War Master. Outside these whispering circles, however, stood the unyielding defenders of the imperial truth, Terra-born veterans, many of whom had fought alongside the Emperor for over 200 years. These warriors had served before their Primarch's rediscovery, upholding the Emperor's will with their lives. They embodied the original honor and loyalty of their legions, and they would never tolerate betrayal of the Master of Mankind. As heresy spread through the lodges, these loyalists were shunned. They watched with sorrow as the bonds between Astartes frayed, unaware that the coldness was a mask for outright treachery. Worse still, they had become enemies of their own primarchs and their entire legions. The trap, loyalists sent to the slaughter. Before the Istvaan III suppression campaign began, Horus secretly ordered the primarchs to identify and isolate these loyalists, labeled untrustworthy or suspect, and assign them to the vanguard. This force numbered over 100 Space Marine companies, nearly 100,000 Astartes. Horus commanded them to board non-return orbital drop pods, lightly armed, and launch a no-raid on Istvaan III's rebel militia. Against such a massive Astartes force, the planet's millions of mortal rebels stood no chance. Within hours, the uprising was crushed. For the Loyalists on the ground, victory felt like a triumph for the Imperium. They had defended the Emperor's realm, fulfilling their oaths. But when they tried to contact Horus's fleet in orbit, there was no reply. All communication channels went dead. Then, the sky darkened. From above, virus bombs rained down. Horus's true weapon. His plan had been simple. Gather the Loyalists on the surface, then erase them in one strike. Virus bombs are unspeakable weapons of mass destruction, loaded with the Life Eater. Virus, a pathogen that spreads across a planet's surface in minutes. Even the environmental seals of Space Marine power armor could not fully fend it off. The virus seeped through coolant vents and joint gaps, attacking at the cellular level. Creatures exposed to it dissolved into putrid sludge, forests rotted into fetid swamps. As the virus broke down organic matter, it released vast clouds of flammable gas. When ignited, whether by a stray bolt round or a deliberate order, these gases turned the atmosphere into a blazing inferno, incinerating all combustible material and leaving only barren rock. When Horus dropped the virus bombs, 8 billion mortal civilians on Istvaan III died instantly. Their lives meant nothing to the War Master, but the Loyalist Astartes were not so easily destroyed. Only a third fell to the virus. Why? Because a handful of Loyalists in Horus's fleet had escaped the purge, and they acted in time. The betrayal uncovered Garrow and Soltarion's heroism. Among those still in orbit was Nathaniel Garrow, captain of the Death Guard's 7th Company, and Soltarion, a captain of the Emperor's Children. Both had sensed something amiss. Garrow's frigate, the Eisenstein, had intercepted encrypted orders from Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit Orders, to neutralize all Vanguard elements. When the virus bombs fell, Garrow knew the truth. In a desperate gambit, Garrow seized control of the Eisenstein. He dispatched Soltarion in a Thunderhawk gunship, breaking through the fleet's blockade to reach Istvaan III's surface. Soltarion's warning arrived just in time. The Loyalists scattered, seeking shelter in sealed bunkers, underground tunnels, and the ruins of the planet's capital, Coral City. With the warning delivered, Garrow fled Istvaan III, his mission now clear: reach Terra and tell the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. The Eisenstein would face chaos raiders and warp storms, but Garrow's resolve never wavered. He carried the fate of the Imperium in his hands. The siege of Coral City. Loyalty against overwhelming odds. When the fires died and the virus dissipated, the Loyalists emerged to a hellscape. The air was thick with crimson dust, oxygen levels plummeting. Once grand buildings lay in rubble. Rage burned in their chests, betrayed by their brothers, their primarchs, their war master. They had lost 40,000 Astartes, but the fight was only beginning. Trapped on Istvaan III, with no way to escape, they vowed to make the traitors bleed. Horus's fleet could have bombarded the planet into dust, but chaos intervened. Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, had grown restless. Implanted with the butcher's nails, a brutal device driven into his skull as a child slave, which flooded his brain with rage. Angron could not abide the Loyalist survival. Defying Horus's orders, he led 50 World Eaters companies in an orbital drop, charging toward the Loyalists with his twin chain axes, Mornival. Angron's recklessness derailed Horus's plan. What was meant to be a quick purge became a grinding ground war. Horus fumed. He needed the World Eater's strength for his upcoming assault on Terra, but he could not abandon Angron. Reluctantly, he ordered the sons of Horus, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children to join the fray, determined to crush the Loyalists with overwhelming force and assert his authority. The Loyalists, led by Soltarion, Emperor's Children, Loken Lunar Wolves, once Horus's own captain, and Torgadan Lunar Wolves, retreated into Coral City's ruins. Once a cultural hub of the Imperium, with grand cathedrals and plazas, it was now a maze of broken stone and mud. The Loyalists used its sewers, crypts, and collapsed towers to wage guerrilla war. World Eaters' patrols were ambushed in narrow alleys. Death Guard siege lines were sabotaged with stolen melter bombs. Emperor's Children aircraft were shot down by repurposed anti-aircraft guns. Even in chaos, the Loyalists fought with purpose. Every day they held out was a day Garrow gained to reach Terra. Every traitor they killed weakened Horus's army, but the odds were stacked against them. Horus's forces had air support, armored columns including land raiders and predators, and an endless supply of reinforcements. The Loyalists had only their armor, growing more tattered by the day, dwindling ammo, and their unbreakable loyalty to the Emperor. The Death Guard's slow advance, Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, did not share Angron's fury. He fought with cold, methodical cruelty. His legion, masters of siege warfare, occupied rebel bunkers on Coral City's northwest flank, forming an unbreakable line between the Loyalists and the traitors. Mortarion deployed heavy artillery and death shroud terminators, advancing behind a wall of toxic gas that choked the air. The Loyalist Death Guard held firm, using flamers to burn through the gas and melt Terminator armor, but each day their ranks thinned. Mortarion cared nothing for speed. He wanted to break their will, to make them beg for death before he granted it. The World Eaters, bloodbath Angron's World Eaters, were a force of pure destruction. In one brutal engagement, 2,000 Loyalist World Eaters, led by Captain Angron, charged Angron's 5,000 traitors. It was a battle of kinsmen. Chinaxes clashed, power swords stabbed, and bolter fire tore through armor. Angron fought with the fury of a man betrayed, but he stood no chance against Angron. The Primarch cut a swath through the Loyalists, his nails driving him into a frenzy. Angron was tackled by traitors, torn limb from limb. Afterward, Angron scattered his World Eaters across the city's north, ordering them to kill everything that breathes. No tactics, no mercy, only bloodshed. The final stand, the fall of the Loyalists. For 3 Terran months, the siege dragged on. The Loyalists slowed Horus's plans, inflicting heavy losses, but their time was running out. The warp storm above Istvaan III dissipated, clearing the skies for Horus's aircraft. His armor columns pushed deeper into Coral City, squeezing the Loyalists into smaller and smaller pockets. Ammo was gone. Many fought with broken blades or their bare hands. The end came when the last 100 Loyalists, including Loken and Soltarion, took refuge in Coral City's Grand Cathedral, the shrine of the Emperor's Light. Horus halted his ground attack, recalling even Angron still screaming for blood. Then, the fleet opened fire. There was no precision, only a rain of macro-cannon shells and lance fire, leveling the cathedral and the surrounding ruins. The Loyalists did not run. They stood their ground, firing their last bolts, swinging their broken axes. When the smoke cleared, only Loken survived, knocked unconscious by a falling pillar hidden beneath rubble until Horus's forces left. The Battle of Istvaan III was a defeat for the Loyalists, but not a meaningless one. They had delayed Horus by 3 months, bought Garo time to reach Terra, and blooded the traitors' noses. Most importantly, they had exposed Horus's treachery to the Emperor. The aftermath, Horus turns to Istvaan Both. Horus's decision to end the siege was not an act of mercy, it was urgency. Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's children, had brought him dire news. He had attempted to recruit Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands, a longtime friend, to the rebellion. Ferrus had refused, denouncing Fulgrim as a heretic and attacking him. Horus knew Terra would soon learn of his betrayal. The Emperor's fleets would come for him. But chaos was still on his side. The warp storm had weakened Imperial communications and mobility, while Horus's fleets moved freely through the warp. He needed to strike fast before the Imperium could mobilize. His next target was clear, Istvaan III, a nearby world where he would destroy the remaining Loyalist legions and solidify his control over the traitor forces. The Battle of Istvaan III had ignited the horusheresy. Now Istvaan V would become the stage for an even bloodier clash, a battle that would decide the fate of the Imperium and the galaxy itself.